You are now tuning in to Discover Your Potential with radio talk show host Dan Gilman, Cindy Gilman's son. So listen, participate, be inspired, know that you can discover your potential. Here he is, Dan Gilman.
You're listening to Discover Your Potential. I'm your host, Dan Gilman, and this is a very special episode. We actually have a very special series for the arts and promoting the arts. I myself come from an art background, and my mother always supported me. But today we have a very special guest, Guy Stanley Philoche. He's an incredible artist located in New York City, and as you saw in the video, and I'm going to just segue right to Guy. He's incredible. Welcome to Discover Your Potential. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Oh my God, Dan, thank you so much for taking time out your schedule and want to sit down and talk to me.
Absolutely. And first I want to ask you about your upbringing. What was it like as a child, and have you always been inspired to follow a path as an artist?
So to answer that question, I have to basically tell you a little bit about my background.
Yeah.
So both my parents were born in Haiti. I came over when I was about 5 years old, and I didn't speak the language at all. English is like my second language, and I was this very young and awkward kid growing up. And I learned how to speak the language through watching, cartoons, daytime TV, and I found my way and I found my voice through art. So to answer that question, yes, I've always wanted to be an artist, but I think that my big aha Oprah moment, I would say, was probably when I was in junior high school and we took a class trip to the museums, and that's when I fell in love with art. That's when I fell in love with Picasso's and Monet's and all the classics. Yeah.
Did you attend an art school when you went to college, or?
Yeah. So I did go to Perry College of Art. It's a small art school in Connecticut, and then I made my way to Yale. Um,
No.
and then after that, I decided it was time for me to move to New York. Packed everything I had. I moved to New York with $5,000, a duffel bag, and a dream.
Wow, that's incredible.
So I grew up drawing a lot. I grew up copying comic books, watching lots of cartoons, drawing lots of cartoons. I never realized I can make a career of it until when I was in high school. In high school, that's when I realized, wow, you can actually make a career of being a painter or being an artist. And of course, when you're an artist, there's so many different fields of art. You have illustrators, you have painters, you have graphic designers. Um, you have so many different avenues that you can go through. But I fell in love with just drawing and painting. um, I remember when I told my mom that I wanted to be an artist. um, I sat them down. I sat both my parents down. I was like, listen, I think I'm going to go and become an artist and go to art school. And also too, you
Hmm.
need to And when you have a Caribbean background like myself, in our culture, it's our parents sacrifice so much, so therefore we don't have to. And so in our culture, we were supposed to be doctors, lawyers, engineers, but not just that. We want, it's all about having a job with a pension. I remember telling my mom that I wanted to go to art school, and she sat me down and said, "Listen, baby, you are too smart and too bright, and I scrub enough toilets, so therefore you never have to." Because my mom, was a house cleaner and a maid, and my dad was an engineer. And I was like, "Mom, this is just what I want to do." And she was like, "Listen, we love you, but we're not paying for you to become an artist." And I was just like, "Yeah, I totally understand that." After I graduated high school, I grabbed my diploma. I took my picture. I took the picture with my parents. I kissed them both on the cheek, and I said goodbye. And I left home when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
And look back.
Oh, that's interesting. So I always, because I also come from an art background. I attended art school as well. But what inspires your art, and where do you find your inspiration for your work, for your pieces?
Well, one thing about me I like to say is that I'm a little different because I do series. Every few years I'll do I'm always bouncing to a different series and different series. And usually a series usually will have like between 30 to 35 paintings in a
Mm,
series. Sorry about that. And once that's done, I move on to a new series. And listen, my inspiration comes from everything. Living in New York, walking down the street, you get inspired. Meeting interesting people, hearing people's stories. Um, it's interesting and fascinating. Um, this latest series right now I'm working on, it's called "Give Us Our Flowers."
mm,
It's a series that started. The series hit me, I would say, about a month and a half ago when I lost a really good friend of mine
mm,
who was one of my biggest collectors, my lawyer who helped me negotiate all my contracts, but just a really good friend that I'd known for years.
Sorry
And
for
he
your
passed.
loss.
Oh, thanks. And he passed away all suddenly,
Wow.
and so I go to his funeral, and the funeral was completely packed with, people that loved him. Um, and I noticed one thing when I was at this funeral, everyone was praising him. Everyone kept saying like, "Oh, he was an amazing guy. He was such a smart attorney. I wish I had told him how fun he was when he was alive." Everyone just kept saying, "I wish that I had time to tell him
Mm,
how great and amazing he was." So his death really shook me up. Listen, I dealt with grief, and I dealt with loved ones dying, but this one
yeah.
kind of really hit me really hard. And traditional therapy just wasn't working for me. I was seeing my therapist. We were talking about it. I just couldn't shake it off.
Mm,
So one day I just decided just to go in the studio and start painting. But I start painting his portrait over and over and over again,
wow.
and that's when like a new series just kind of blossomed into it. And so now this is a new series, and that's doing really well, and people are really responding really well to it.
Wow, that's incredible. Can you, for the viewers that don't know your work, um, can you tell us more about your artistic style and how has it evolved over the years?
Oh my God, that's a really good question. Yeah, so I'm classically trained, but my I think I would say my big break was my abstract paintings for a long time,
Wow.
called Untitled series. I was a huge Mark Rothko fan.
Oh,
So,
nice.
just picture, a really beautiful color studies. But what I did different was I put this amazing texture on them. All my work is really texture driven.
Can you tell us more about your artistic style and how it has evolved over the years?
Yeah, if you look at my body of work, I'm classically trained, so therefore I have different. I like to say I have different styles, but one of my big breaks as an artist is it's probably what I'm really well known for is my abstract paintings They're called my Untitled series. Mark Rothko was a huge. I was a huge fan of Mark Rothko, of his work, and he influenced me a lot. So the series called Untitled is basically dedicated to him. And throughout the years, the work, again, different stuff influences me, and the work has evolved and grow. And then I go from doing more cartoon stuff, um, and those cartoon stuff like Charlie Brown or Snoopy or Peanut characters or Garfield and everything like that. Those are dedicated to like my childhood growing up as a kid. Waking up Saturday mornings with a bowl of cereal and watching cartoons, and then from there, I'm doing more figurative works and everything like that until where I am right now, where I'm doing more figurative works.
Nice.
One thing that I think I would like to say is like I'm very grateful and very blessed that I have a gallery that allows me to grow and evolve as an artist, because I've known so many artists who are very successful, but they're stuck painting the same narrative over and over and over because it's selling, and they're scared to. I would say think outside the box or get out of their comfort zone. Also, too, I'm very grateful that I have collectors that love everything I do.
Yes.
I have collectors have pieces of every series I've done, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that sounds really incredible. I would love to know, even as an artist too, like how do you approach creating a new piece of work, and what is your process like?
It's the process is like you have like this little idea, and then you just attack the canvas. I have friends who they want to sketch a million sketches or do stuff on the computer. I'm old school, man. I just attack the canvas and just work out through there. If something's not working, you just take that rag, you just scrape it off, and even scraping it off, something really beautiful tends to happen. So that's just my process. I just attack the canvas until it hits.
And just for viewers who are artists too, I know that they've had their own kind of share of struggles or challenges, I should say. But can you share any like challenges or struggles that you faced as an artist, and how did you overcome them? Because I know
I,
that
s-
really
I
helps.
still face lots of struggles and challenges as an artist. The fact of the matter is this. I live in New York City. And I live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. But at the same time, New York it's basically one of the capitals of the art world. And everybody and their mother in the city is an artist. What I mean? So we're all fighting for the same wall space. We're fighting for the same gallery. We're fighting for that same critic to do, to critique artwork for the New York Times. So the competition is very fierce. And I don't mind that. But I beat to my own drum. And what I mean by that is like, I have a philosophy that I live by. And I live by. Since I moved to New York, and since I had success, every time I sell a painting, I buy a painting for an up and coming artist. Because I remember being that kid who didn't get his big break yet. I remember being that kid who was so broke that he finally had a group show at a little gallery, but I couldn't afford to rent a U-Haul. So I had to take my 4 paintings, strap it on a dolly, and walk 30 blocks. And the fact of the matter is like no one opened doors for me. I was that kid who went through the back door, through the window to be in the room, to get into the room. But there was something interesting about like once I was in the room, my presence was always known. So I don't forget where I'm from. So, and that's why I always say that like there's enough for everybody. I have friends who are getting $500,000 to $1 million for their artwork. I have friends who haven't gotten their big break yet. And now that I actually have a seat at the table and I'm in the room, my job now is just to make sure I try to open as many doors as possible, because there is enough room for everybody.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's just interesting to hear as an artist too, because I always, for me anyway, I've always was fearful about pursuing my work
Oh no,
as
it's
an
not.
artist.
Yeah, it's not easy. Listen, it's not
Yeah,
going. There's a handful of people that things happen overnight for them as soon as they graduate. But it's just one of those things. It's lots of hard work,
yep,
lots of focus. And the question I always tell people is like, what are you willing to sacrifice?
yep.
Because
Well,
it
it's
is about
also
sacrifice.
about two mindset too, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, but I think the key thing is though too, it's such a
mm,
business now. You know
mm,
what I mean? And the artwork has changed so much in the past 20 years, Dan. Let me tell you. 20
yeah,
years ago when I first moved to New York, I could just bring my portfolio into a gallery, and a gallery owner would be like, would love to meet a new artist and give you 5 minutes of their time. You
yeah,
know? Now it doesn't work like that. But also too,
mm,
um, technology has changed the game right now too. You have social media. It's a game changer
yeah.
now for a lot of artists. I have artists friends. I have friends of mine who are artists that they're crushing it. And they don't need a gallery anymore. So it's been one of those things where you just gotta find what works for you.
And I wanted to delve into this. I know you talked about this earlier, but you've helped so many artists, including not only purchasing their work, as you mentioned, and showcasing it to other
Mhm.
artists, but what advice do you have for aspiring artists and who are just like starting out on their kind of creative journey?
Um, I would say this: take a long look in the mirror and ask yourself, is this something what you truly, truly want? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, even though I love what I do and everything like that, it's not for everybody.
Right.
It really isn't for everybody. And again, it's one of those things you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because it is a lot of sacrifice. You know, um, you just gotta want it. You just gotta want it, and you gotta show up and do the work. I know I don't want to sound cheesy and everything like that, but like I think this generation now, um, I want to say just they don't dream anymore. What
Mm,
happened to just dream big? I'm 45 years old, and and
yeah.
I still dream. And one thing that I'm very lucky about and love seeing is when your dreams come true. And guess what, Dan? It's time for me to dream even bigger now.
Yeah.
These kids now, they don't dream anymore, man. They want instant gratification right away without doing the work. You
Mm,
know, and for instance, when you get to my level in my career and my price point, it's it's a whole different ball game because I'm not selling paintings for $2,000-3,000 anymore. I'm at the $50,000 to $100,000 price point now, and at that price point, you got to look at yourself as a brand.
right.
So right now I like to say that I'm a CEO of my company,
Mhm,
and my paintings are my stocks.
mhm,
And once a person buys my paintings, they're buying my stock. And once you become once you buy my stock, now you're now a board member and a shareholder. And what's the number one rule of being a good CEO is make sure that your stocks and your shareholders are happy. And how do you make them happy? By continue adding value to your stock.
yeah, that's great. That's a great analogy.
So that's what I do now, because I'm my work's a commodity now, and I have a lot of people that believe in me, that invest in my work. And
Mm,
now my job is not just to make great artwork, but to make sure that the value of the work goes up in value.
yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, that's great. Yeah. No, I'm just even thinking like getting from where you were when you first began and just exploding, because you
It's believe it or not, it's nothing difficult really. It's just doing the work, man. I wish that had social media 20 years ago, and
mm,
now, it's one of those things where, listen, it's sacrifice. I'm 45, for instance, I'm 45 years old, and I fell in love with many beautiful women in my life, who had to have children, and I met some incredible women that I thought were potential, but the deal breaker is I didn't want to have children right now. And
mm,
because when you're pursuing art for what I'm trying to do and what I wanted to do, you have to take these big gambles and these big risks, you
Right.
know, and sometimes they're huge financial risk, you know, like going to Miami, doing the art fairs and everything like that. Sometimes I have to invest, you know, $20,000. You know,
Right.
perfect. I'll tell you a funny story. A few years back, you know, I got an opportunity to do the Aspen Art Fair. You
Mhm.
know, the owner who owns the fair calls me up and is like, "Hey, we're a big fan of yours. We'd love to give you a solo booth at the fair. It's $15,000. Do you want to do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, it's Aspen in the
Right.
summertime. Oh my God, yes." So yeah, I put it on my credit card. You know, I rented a U-Haul. I had 20 paintings. I drove from New York to Aspen, Colorado in a
Wow.
U-Haul by myself with nothing but Red Bull and beef jerky.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
yeah, you know, and I set up the booth and it looked really beautiful and everything like that just to break even.
Wow. Oh gosh.
You
Yes.
know,
Yep.
what I mean? So, but you know, I did it though, you know, and then just to break even, basically, you know.
Hmm.
So, but sometimes I'm lucky that I just broke even because there's sometimes where you do stuff like that, you either hit a home run, you break even, or you take a hit,
Yeah.
you know. And when you have children, and
It's harder.
it gets harder, you know, because it's not about you anymore. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
It's about it's about this child that you brought
Yes.
into the world. You know,
Yep.
so it's one of those things about again, it's sacrifice. You have to be a little selfish and self-absorbed. You know, to pursue this career. So that's why I say it's not for everyone. If
Got
you
it.
truly want to make it, you know,
Yes. Because you got to hustle.
it's and the thing is today it never stops. The
Yeah.
hustle never stops. The grinding never stops. You know,
Yeah.
another story I could tell you is, you know, when I do take a vacation once in a while, and I'll, I was in where was I? I was in the Bahamas 1 year, and just I just needed to turn it off a little bit, you know. And
Of course.
I went to the bar, and I was ordering a drink, and this lovely couple came, and the guy threw down his Black American Express card on the bar. And I was like, when you see that, that means like, wow, you know, you're a multimillionaire. And
Sure.
I was just, and it kicked in. You know, I was like, hey man, what's going on? Let me buy you a round of drink. Where you guys from? You know, chat them up. You know, and
Hmm.
next thing you know, became friends, and we had dinner. They were from New York as well,
Oh, that's
and
funny.
and they came by the studio and bought two paintings. You know,
Wow. There you
but
go.
I shouldn't. But I was supposed to be on vacation where you're supposed to turn it off. You can't turn it off. You know, when
Right.
you see an opportunity, you know, you have to strike. But that's what I'm saying. The hustle never stops. The grinding never stops. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where, like, it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's a
Right.
lifestyle.
Yes. Purchase paid for your trip too.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. Exactly. So, but it was just one of those things where, if I didn't put myself out there and, and just said hi to the guy, and, bum around drinks, met his lovely wife, we talked, and they're like, what do you do? I was like, oh, I'm an artist. I'm on vacation. Oh my
Right.
God, we love art too. And next thing you know, we just kind of hit it off. And they were from New York. And it's so funny too, I've been in New York 20 years, and every time I travel around the world, I meet more New Yorkers.
Oh wow. There you go. That's funny.
I leave New York to meet more New
To meet New
Yorkers.
Yorkers. Well, that's great because they're close by, so they'll
Yeah,
come
yeah,
to your
exactly,
studio.
exactly.
That
So,
and that actually led to my next question, ironically. But how do you balance your art with other commitments and responsibilities in your life? But I guess you
um,
answered that.
no, you don't. You really, I really don't. I think one thing that brings me joy is that, because of my success and everything, I'm allowed to I have the ability to buy art from other artists, like
Mhm.
behind me now, you can see my home,
Love it.
my loft. It's like my wall is just covered with art, and I love coming home. So
That's incredible.
those are things that give me a little joy that, I get to, every time I sell a painting, I get to buy another painting, I have two storage units just filled with art.
Oh wow.
And every 6 months, I'm constantly just rotating stuff
Okay.
in it.
That's cool.
you know so
Yeah.
those things are giving me joy, but no, I would say though, it gets harder.
Mhm.
It gets harder now because now it's more like you're a businessman now. You're a business now.
Yeah.
You're a brand. And my thing is like I don't want to disappoint my collectors. Because they're investing a lot of money in me. They love the work, but they're investing in me. I like to surround myself with successful people. Like I already know what it takes to become a successful artist, but I like to surround myself with successful doctors, successful lawyers, successful CEO, successful mechanics, successful entrepreneur, because or even successful athletes, because
Mhm.
I want to know what their blueprint is and hear it and learn from them and take little pieces here and there and tweak it into my story and my blueprint to take things to the next level.
That's great.
If that makes any sense at
No, it
all.
does actually. And not to bring up Les Brown, but he always says your network is your net worth.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
So
also too, I always tell people, your contacts is it's currency.
yeah, that
You
too.
know, in New York City, and there's another one that says if you can't be used, you're useless.
Oh gosh.
One of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
So, it's being, for up and coming artists that I tend to meet that emails me all the time. The first question I always ask them is, where do you live? Because what's heartbreaking is seeing these amazing, talented artists,
Yeah.
but they live in, East Bumble in Ohio, you know?
Yep. True. Yep.
And I was like, dude, you're wasting your talent in East Bumble, Ohio somewhere.
Mhm.
Like if you truly want to pursue this, what I mean, you have to come to a major city like New York, LA, Chicago, a metropolitan city,
Mhm.
So that's always the first thing I always ask people, like, where do you live? And I've met so many talented artists who live in these small towns where people don't care about art. They don't understand the value of art. They don't understand, they don't
Yeah.
see art as,
Collectors aren't there.
yeah.
With all that said, though, how do you stay motivated and continue to grow?
Um, because I haven't hit the end game for me yet. One of the coolest things I would say that's been happening that I like to do in my career is like I like to have a vision board.
Mm,
Every year I put a vision board together of things that I want to accomplish.
love it.
What's really cool, Dan, is taking things off the vision board that you've accomplished. Like, a certain car, having a loft, buying this, getting interviewed by this person, blah, blah. And that all that means is you're not dreaming big enough now. So
True.
for me now is just like when you ask me that question, how do you just I keep dreaming big enough. I just keep dreaming bigger and bigger and bigger. Because the end goal for me is the MoMA. And then you ask me,
Love
well, what happens next? What happens next month? The MoMA purchase 2 your paintings. Well, guess what? Now it's the tape.
it. Yep.
you know,
Just keep going up.
you just keep
Yes.
going. You
Yeah.
just keep going. And also too, one of the best things that ever happened to me is that my parents didn't pay for me to go to art school, because that made me realize that failure was not an option. There was no plan B.
Yeah.
So like I understand the value of of what I'm doing to make things happen. Now, if my parents had paid for me to go art school, things could have been different. I really think so. I
Mm.
would have probably been like a little loosey goosey on what direction of art I want to go to. Maybe I'll take a graphic design class. Maybe I'll do a little illustration here. Maybe I'll maybe work for Disney. But the fact that I had to pay for it out of my own pocket, I had to, work 2 jobs, go to school full time, made me was like, yeah, dude, failure is not an option, you know? So I think my parents, every time I see them, and now 20 years later, they look at me and, like over the holidays, my dad was like, I have all the kids, we rode you a little hard. We rode you really hard and I'm sorry. I'm like, don't apologize. What you guys did I'm the man that I am now because of you, because failure wasn't an option now. It wasn't like, and when I met, when they told me they weren't going to pay for me to go to school, Dan,
Yeah.
they really meant that. There was times like, thank God for Subway sandwiches, buy one, get the second one free. Cause I lived off of that for a year.
I know that feeling. Yep.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I'm like, all right, I'm
Hmm.
gonna have one for lunch. Then the second one I'm gonna have for dinner.
Yep. And not have breakfast. Yep. I get that.
Yeah, yeah.
Or this
But
power bar, maybe.
but it made me realize that, like, yeah, dude, there's no going back home. If I wanted to go back home, that means I would have to go to a trade school or a university and switch up my major
Mm.
to get the help that I wanted to get help from. But no,
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, do you use your art to make a positive impact in the world? I mean, it already is, but
um, I listen. One thing that is really dear to me is that art saved my life.
mm,
Okay. And, what I mean by that, I think everyone, I think every teenager comes across a path in their life and what direction they need to go. They either go left or go right. You
mhm,
know, and what I mean that arts in my life, I could have been out here on these streets and get into trouble, been doing just silly things. But the fact that I had a dream and I stayed focused, and also had amazing teachers that kept me on that right path. So what breaks my heart is when I hear that, when a school needs to cut a budget, the first thing that gets cut is the art program.
yeah,
I
unfortunately.
have major, major issues with that because,
Mhm.
not everyone, they're basically saying that
Yeah.
dribbling a ball or catching a ball is more important than
Thank you.
making art. And that's not true. The fact that matters is the odds of you becoming a successful artist in any art field is more likely to happen than you ever becoming a professional
Perfect.
athlete.
Right.
And
Yep.
not everyone's meant to be a doctor, not everyone's meant to be a lawyer,
Yep.
not everyone's meant to be some blue collar thing, but people are meant to make art in some force of in some way.
Yes.
So when I hear a school that's this kind of budget to cut the art program, I'm the first one to either write a check or
Oh, that's great.
auction off one of my paintings to help raise money for the art department or something like that. Because
Mm,
I was that kid who came to America who didn't speak the language but
mhm.
found his voice through art.
Yeah,
You know,
that's great.
so to answer your question, that's how I like to say I use my art to help impact the world a little bit, to continue that, because there's a
Yeah.
kid right now, Dan, that's probably in his room right now, 15, 16 years old, and is a prodigy.
Yeah.
you know but he just needs that extra little push to say, hey man, you're really special, you have a god-given gift, you should pursue art. He might not get that from his parents,
Right.
but he should be getting that from a teacher, a guidance counselor, an art, someone that's an educator.
Yeah,
you know so yeah.
that's great. Yeah, that and I was just gonna segue into what has been the most rewarding part of your career as an artist?
uh, um there's been some really cool perks. When you get to my level of my career, you get to meet some really cool people.
Yeah.
You get to meet some, like, some artists that you admire. You're like, whoa, like, I think one of the coolest things that ever that I experienced, which was really funny, is that Jeff Koons bought one of my paintings.
Oh,
You know?
wow.
Yeah, and it was so
That's
funny.
incredible.
Yeah, I met him a few times. I met him, but the first time I met him was like 15 years ago at an art auction, and I was auctioning off one of my small paintings, and he really digged it, and he
Wow.
purchased it. I was like, oh my god, it's Jeff Koons. I'm like, dude, I studied you in school, and blah blah blah. He was like, oh, You know, I was like that, I was like some little groupie. I was like, oh my God, it's Jeff Koons.
That's great.
You know, well, granted, we're not at the same level, nowhere near, but you know, I'm chasing him though. You know, I'm coming for that crown, man. I'm coming for that crown. You know, he's been sitting on the throne way too long. I'm coming for it. Yeah.
And he's like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, he's like, come get it, you know. But if you're gonna listen, you know, is that saying? If you're gonna come for the king, make sure you have, you know, you got one shot. You know, if you're gonna come for the king, you got one shot. So I'm coming from him.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, it's about celebrating artists, right?
Yeah,
So
you know, and also it's also too it's artists supporting artists.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I'm a truly big fan of that, man. Artists supporting artists. You know, any way I can help using my small little platform to help promote another artist. You know, even if it's a musician, singer, dancer, or visual artist. Yeah, we all have to support each other.
Great. That is great. Yeah.
So fear is it gets the best of people sometimes, man, and even all the greats experience it. So, but one thing that helps me overcome it is that you got to take that first step.
Yes.
That first step is a game changer. You know, the first step is a game changer. Yeah. Yeah,
I miss painting. I miss doing art.
It's never. See, here's the thing. Here's a good thing about being an artist.
It never goes away.
It never goes away, man. You know, like as soon as we get off of this, dude, just grab some, you know, grab some canvas, some paint, and start jamming. Put some music on, have a glass of wine.
It's harder with kids.
I know.
That's where you came from.
I know. So, and the funny thing is, you know, like, you know, this week was a very emotional week for me because a lot of my friends were leaning on me a lot, you know, and because I get people. It's so weird too because, like, you know, I get now that I my career is just taking off a little bit, and you know, I'm in some museums and there's amazing collectors and everything like that, and my friends who've seen me where we both start at the same, you know, playing field, and they see the trajectory that I'm going to, you know, and they see it's been 20 years. Some of my friends now, you know, they're married, they have kids, and they're still trying to paint and everything like that, and they become weekend painters, you know. And you know, and I had a buddy of mine who called me, and he came by my studio. He said, "Hey, can I come by?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm just painting." And he walks into my studio, and he was like, oh, "I just missed that smell." I was like, "What smell?" It's like that paint smell. I was like, "Dude, you're not painting." He's like, "I haven't picked up a brush in like a year and a half, man. It's killing me." And you know, and I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Dude, I have 2 kids now, and you know, and my wife, and you know." But like, I was like, but you know, you're slowly dying though right now.
Exactly. Inside. Absolutely.
You're slowly dying inside, man. Yeah. You know, and even if you paint on the weekends, you know, and the funny thing is, you know, people who are not a creative, they don't understand that it's not something you just turn on right away, you know, because his wife is like, oh, just go to the studio for an hour. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
I go to the studio every single day, but I don't paint every single day. Sometimes I'm in my studio just cleaning brushes
exactly.
all day long, you know, just cleaning brushes. And then one day you're cleaning your brushes and you see something in the corner of your eye. You're like,
it's like epiphany.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it doesn't happen in an hour. You know, it happens like 3 hours in. You're just like, oh shit, I can do something. You know.
Yep.
And you know. And he was like, see, you get it. He was like, I try to explain that to my wife. She just doesn't understand that. Like, well, I'm giving you 2 hours. Go paint. It's like,
right.
It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. Creativity does not work that way.
Oh,
no.
It doesn't, man.
I used to be up 3-4 o'clock in the morning. That's when I was inspired the most. I was like, I got to paint.
Oh, my God. Yeah, exactly. And when it hits you, man. You forget to eat. You forget to sleep. You're just like in the zone. But that's the best feeling in the zone, you know. But with that said, though, you know, I also had to tell him. You know, I was like, you know, with that said, though, like the grass is always greener. You know, like, dude, I come home to like my dog Picasso and my paintings. You know, you come home to 2 beautiful children, a lovely wife, and and maybe one day I'll have that. But that was my decision, you know. And I was like, but you can't resent the person that you love. You can't resent your children because those were your decisions that you made.
Correct.
You know, and I had to remind him about that. I was like, dude, those are, you know, and he was like, yeah, no, you know, he's like, you know, I love my wife, I love my kids. I just wish I had more time. I was like,
Yeah.
I get it, man. Yeah, but again, it goes back to like, you know, what are you willing to sacrifice and to pursue this? You know, because
Yes.
it's you know, it's a lonely life, you know, and you know, before you had kids, you know, you used to be in your studio for hours and days at a time,
Oh my
and
God. Yes.
you know, so yeah, like the
Yeah.
pandemic, you know, it's so funny because you know, it seems like artists were the only ones who were okay with the pandemic because we've always been alone.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. That's
The
true.
pandemic was great for me because like, all right, cool. I'm just gonna be back and forth in my
Because I'll
studio.
just be in my studio
Yeah,
painting.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And I think the
Yep.
pandemic had a lot to do with that too, because
Absolutely.
what the pandemic made people realize is like, life is way too short, man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So if I don't pursue this thing right now,
Yeah.
I don't want to live my life coulda, shoulda, but I didn't.
Is
You
there
know?
anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers about your art or your journey as an artist?
Well, I would say, you know, I would love to tell people like, listen, you know, go for it. You know, use all the tools that you have access to. Use social media. You know, let people know when you go out and networking. Networking is one of the most important things you have to do, but also do it with confidence. You know, so when you do go out and meet somebody at a bar or a restaurant and ask you what you do, say with confidence, "Oh, I'm an artist." You know, don't be like, oh well, sometimes I paint and but I really am you know, accountant, but I like to paint. No, you know, and go for it. Like I said, life is short, man. So if this is what you want to go, do it. You know, but just make sure you realize that failure is not an option for you. You just have to go for it. Go big or go home.
Absolutely. Failure is not an option.
Failure is not an option. It is. It really isn't. You know,
Yeah.
and believe it or not, again, TikTok and Instagram, those are game changers, man. You don't need a
Yeah.
dealer anymore, you know. But also
That's a good
too,
point.
also too, I also highly recommend if you don't have it in you. Some people have it, some people don't. You know, like I'm a great painter, but I'm also a great marketer and a great business person. Take a marketing class because at the end of the day, it's about marketing. You know, it's about knowing your audience, and it's about finding who your audience is, knowing them, and learning how to tap into them.
Makes a lot of sense. That's
Yeah,
great.
because at the end of the day, let's be honest, art. You know, listen, who needs art on their walls? Nobody. You know, let's be honest. You know, like, listen, I'm not saving lives. I'm not a doctor. I didn't discover the cure for cancer or anything like that.
I
But
know,
I
but you're
love,
touching people's lives with your
but
work.
I love art. You know, and
Yeah.
to me, art. See, to me, art is very important. I've met so many wealthy people. They have $10 million homes, and you walk into their homes, they're just not into art. They
Mm,
collect other things. They either collect cars, watches, wines, whatever. You know,
mm,
yeah, you know. So when you get to meet those collectors that love art, man, you know, and yeah, and also too, go
mm.
support go support your local art school, go support your local high school, go support your local art. Because the thing is, I think one thing that people need to understand is that art's not just for the rich.
Mm.
Go support. Go buy a $300 painting. You know, go when you walk into your local Starbucks or your local coffee shop. If there's a really cool black and white photograph someone took, support them. You know, go to your local art school, and every semester they do a senior show or a student show. Go and support and go buy an up and coming artist for paying for like $300, $400. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have to go and spend $100,000 on paintings right away. You build your collection slowly.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I truly appreciate your time
Yeah. No,
today.
no, thank you. And next time you're in the city, let's do this in like, you know, let's do round
Oh,
two
I'd
with
love
some
it.
drinks, and
Love it.
and make it happen.
That would be wonderful. I truly appreciate that.
Hey Dan,
Um,
listen, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Guy. I truly appreciate your time and your energy and your vision and you're a true inspiration to me and so many other people. So,
Oh, well, thanks. I appreciate that.
This is Cindy Gilman, and you're listening to Discover Your Potential. So until next time, do something nice for yourself, but do something nice for someone else.
In every way, every day, I need less of myself, I need more him, 'cause his is the only music that makes me dance. Yes, his is the only music that makes me dance.
Introducing Tower Gardens. With rising gas prices, food prices, fertilizer shortages, and uncertainty about what goes into your food, create an entirely different experience by bringing the supermarket into your home with easy-to-use Tower Gardens. The vertical aeroponic garden system has an efficient, compact design that is soil-free, weed-free, pesticide-free, practically maintenance-free, and requires minimal space. No green thumb necessary. Let your imagination run wild, growing celery, squash, watermelon, herbs, super greens, and much more, indoors or outdoors, all year round. Create your own food supply, save money and precious time with Tower Gardens. Learn more at peopleandpauswellness.com.
Hey, buddy. This ballin'? Stay.
I deserve it so much. That puts you now. You know what I would do to get a ball like that. Wow. I'm such a girl boy. Wow. That looks so yummy.
Okay, go.
We are all natural and drool worthy. Is your pet worthy? Only with Platinum Pet Treats. Subscribe and save up to 25% off. 10% of the gross sales are donated to nonprofit animal and human organizations.